stumble to the kitchen, pour myself a cup of ambition, and yawn and stretch and try to come to life. Jump in the shower and the blood starts pumping. Out on the streets, the traffic starts jumping. With folks like me on the job from 9 to 5. Working 9 to 5. What a way to make a living.
Welcome back to our office hours live. Coming to you from Berkeley, California, live. I'm live. Robert Reich, you're live. Dolly Parton was actually recorded there, but we're all alive, and this is an opportunity for us to talk about what's on your mind and what's on my mind, and I'll answer your questions. Also, I want to just remind you, share. Be sure to share this with other people now, because although you can see it later, people can see it later, it's important if people are interested in asking questions and having my responses and knowing that this is live. And every week we have topics. Every week at this particular point in time, we are going to be doing this. And let us know, by the way, if this is a good time for you. I mean, we do it every week at this time, but some of you have said that maybe evening would be better. I'm just going to go over the topics today. We're going to be talking about, this has been Dolly, I love you, still has not got back to me, by the way, still. But this week we're going to be talking about a bunch of topics. This has been a hard week, hasn't it? Has it been a hard week for you? It's been a hard week for me, and it's been a hard week for the country. For those of us who have been supporting Bernie Sanders, it's been a tough week. We'll get to that. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about the terrible tragedy in Orlando, Florida. We'll talk about Donald Trump, who has a birthday today, 70 years old. Listen, some of us are getting up there, and we respect people who have 70th birthdays, but it's hard to respect this particular 70th birthday. So I'm not going to even say happy birthday, Donald Trump. We'll take your questions. I mean, there's a lot to talk about, much of it, and it's going to be upbeat. I mean, can I just tell you, I am an optimistic person. I try to look at the cup always half full rather than half empty. And although I try to be realistic, I also just try to talk to myself and find reasons to be upbeat. So this is not going to be a downbeat. This is going to be fairly upbeat. But let me just start with something that's very hard to find anything good to say about, and that is what happened over the weekend. The tragedy that we all, in fact, participate in, and we all stand in solidarity with the LGBTQ community, our brothers and sisters. It's hard to come up with the degree of sadness and anger and outrage that I think that you feel and I feel about what has happened. It's also very hard to talk about this without talking about the easy accessibility of assault weapons. I mean, I was there in the Clinton administration when the assault weapons ban was put into effect in 1994. Many people don't remember it. But we had an assault weapons ban in this country, and it was making progress, and then it was got rid of in 2004. The particular gun, the AR-15, this automatic weapon capable of firing 8 rounds a second, was prohibited during that assault weapons ban. And now, of course, sales are going up because every time we have any kind of a mass shooting in this country, people get scared. And the politics of fear that's now taken over so much of our politics is about getting ready for what? For some terrible thing that's going to happen. So people buy even more weapons, and we weaponize. We're becoming a weaponized culture. Why don't we remember? Australia is as much a Wild West culture, certainly as the United States, but Australia had a terrible incident of mass violence and death and destruction from guns. And what did Australia do? They not only banned assault weapons and banned guns, most guns, but they also had a gun buyback program. And so all the guns out there, the government actually bought them back. And since then, Australia, even the Australian culture, is very similar to the United States culture in terms of Wild West. Australia does not have the kind of gun violence we do. So is there anything to learn from this? Of course there's something to learn. Which gets me to the issue of what the person who has his 70th birthday today actually said in response to this terrible, terrible tragedy. What did he say? He said in a tweet, he said, "Congratulations to me for suggesting that Muslims be banned from the United States." I mean, this is using an incident of homophobia and discrimination to what? To elevate his own particular discriminatory, biased, bigoted view against an entire religion. This is what neo-fascists have done. This is what was done in the 1930s. We must not fall for it. Which gets us to this campaign. If you've had a chance to watch our video, what Republicans ought to be doing, they ought to be, if they're responsible people, Republican leaders, they ought to be getting rid of Donald Trump. They should not be even considering nominating him. There have been some very, I think, courageous Republicans over the last couple of weeks. Lindsey Graham, for example, said just last week, and we congratulated him. I gave him kudos for this. He said, every Republican ought to withdraw an endorsement of Donald Trump. The exit ramp is right now. This is after Trump went after Judge Curiel and called him hateful and irresponsible, a Mexican. I mean, this is using hate to build his political platform. And Lindsey Graham responsibly said, no, we're not going to stand for this. And this week, Meg Whitman, who ran for governor of California, she compared, at a meeting of Republicans, she compared Donald Trump to Hitler and Mussolini and was adamantly against supporting him. And even Mitt Romney, remember Mitt Romney? Mitt Romney is coming out trying to organize Republicans against nominating Donald Trump. Well, Republicans, anybody who is a Republican leader who might be listening and watching right now, how many of you out there? How many Republican leaders? I can see you. Put your hands up. None. Well, listen, you may know a Republican leader. Get them to withdraw their endorsements at the very least, so that there can be, at the Republican convention, some justification for not making Trump the Republican nominee, which gets me to Bernie Sanders. Bernie, I love you. We don't know what Bernie's going to do. In fact, I've tried to get latest information. He's going to be meeting with Hillary Clinton this afternoon, talking about what he thinks is important for the Democratic platform. I don't know what he is planning to do, but I believe, now this is just my opinion, you may disagree, and I'm happy to talk to you about it. I think he should stay into the convention. That's the process. That's the law. I mean, he's got 22 states behind him. He's not a fringe candidate. A huge number of people voted for him. He's got pledged delegates, a large percentage of the pledged delegates, not enough to get him the nomination right now. He may not get the nomination. In fact, I think there's a very small chance he will, but at least his voice needs to be there. He needs to use his bargaining leverage to push the Democratic Party as far as that Democratic Party can be pushed in the direction of the political revolution that we all know is necessary. So Bernie, stay in. I don't think you should criticize Hillary Clinton. I don't think you should help Donald Trump in any way. In fact, quite the opposite. You're going to be a dignified statesman, and you have been, and you will be. But I think you ought to stay in terms of representing the voices and the people who have voted for you. Which gets me to this issue about a third party. Not now. I'm talking about after the election. No, we don't want a third party now because that would help Donald Trump. But after the election, and this is something I'd like your feedback about. several of you have suggested this, that Bernie Sanders really chair a new party, and that new party, maybe it's going to be called the New Progressive Party. I don't know what it should be called. What are your ideas about what it should be called? But the purpose of this party, and by the way, it's not financed by big money. It's financed, to the contrary, by small contributions, maybe a membership kind of organization. It's to field new candidates for the Senate, for the House, even for state races, also to support candidates that will get behind the political revolution, particularly getting big money out of politics. And thirdly, ready a candidate possibly for the election of 2020. You need that kind of political base and that kind of political organization, and Bernie Sanders already has the beginnings of that political organization. Bernie, I hope you consider this. And those of you out there, I hope you consider it as well. This is not, if you're a Hillary Clinton supporter, this is not negative with regard to you. I think that Hillary needs to adopt some of these ideas, some of these principles, become part of the political revolution. And so, in the spirit of being upbeat with all of this news this week, I just want to tell you one thing. There's been a 4% increase in charitable contributions by Americans. In fact, 60% of Americans have been making charitable contributions, and we are a good people. You know, despite the drumpf and despite all of the the gun culture and everything else we've been talking about, this is a good and wonderful nation. Don't forget that. Just one anecdote, and I'm gonna go to your questions. I remember how hopeless I felt back in 1968. Does anybody remember 1968? You remember? Anybody here? Anybody in this room remember 1968? You don't. I'm alone. I'm alone here in this room. I'm an old fart, and I'm alone here in this room. Everybody else is young. But I remember 1968, and here's what I remember. I was organizing states for Eugene McCarthy, the anti-Vietnam War candidate, and I came to California, organizing California. I had worked for Bobby Kennedy, so I knew a lot of those people. And even though I was working for Eugene McCarthy, I was on Bobby Kennedy's side as well. And then you remember, or maybe you historians remember if you're too young, Bobby Kennedy was shot and killed in California in June. And this is after Martin Luther King in that spring had been shot and killed. Our cities that summer were up in flames. And people would be dying in Vietnam. I had a very good friend who died in Vietnam that summer. And it looked as, and the Democratic Convention there was tear gas and Richard Daley in Chicago. I mean, it looked like everything was falling apart. And then what happens? Well, Richard Nixon is on the way to getting elected. And I remember thinking at that time, America is going to complete hell. It's going to complete hell, and nothing, I mean, everything is bad. Well, let me just tell you, it's not nearly that bad now. In fact, there's a lot to be positive and hopeful about. And you and I have talked about it. We've talked about the fight for 15, a minimum wage. That thing it's growing. You and I have talked about how much progress the LGBTQ community has made despite the tragedy last weekend in terms of rights, in terms of laws and reforms. We have talked about Bernie Sanders as a phenomenon. If somebody had said to me 2 years ago that a kind of rumpled 74-year-old Jewish social democrat could win 22 states, and all of the enthusiasm of young people who actually, even in states that he did not win, most young people were with him, including a majority of young women and Latinos. If you had told me that, I would have said, no way. Am I being too positive for you? All right, let's get to your questions. And by the way, share. Please share. Remember how your parents, your mother used to tell you to share when you were in kindergarten? Or even before that. Share. Please share. Okay, Pam Allen. I'm outraged by the judge's actions in Brock Turner's rape case, the Stanford swimmer. What are your thoughts? Well, Pam, that's another thing that obviously happened this week, and I am outraged as well. I mean, the jury not only found that he had committed rape, but also recommended 6 years, and he got 6 months. And, to somebody who is looking at this, it is very easy to see, number one, a kind of white privilege. I mean, if the defendants had been Latino or black or lower class, can you imagine 6 months? No, I think it would have been 6 years, at least. And it's also, I think, a sign of privilege that, again, I don't want to in any way be harsh, but the defendant's father comes out and talks about, I mean, he's a swimmer, and he's Stanford, and he's, this has been a terrible, terrible experience for him. Well, I'm sorry. I mean, we have got to, in this country, understand that rape is going to be punished severely. Severely. This is a direct assault. All right. I'm getting myself worked up here. Okay, Jamie Sexton, what would common sense gun policy look like to you? Jamie, common sense gun policy, number one, you have a ban on anybody who's an alleged terrorist from going into an airplane. I mean, if you have a no-fly policy for alleged terrorists who are on the watch list, I mean, why should any of them have access to weapons? Why shouldn't you have a no-buy list at the very least? And I mean, another thing that is at the very least, I mean, this is minimal. I mean, we say you can't even advertise things in this country, contraceptives or cigarettes or other kind of, why should you be able to advertise assault weapons? And then number three, why don't we have an assault weapons ban? Why do we consider these things hunters? These are machine guns. Hunters need this? And number four, let's have a buyback policy, like Australia, as I said before. All right, next question. Eli Batterton, do you think that the acts of terror have grown from all the wars in the past years? Well, there's no question, Eli, that we have not only weaponized ourselves, but we have a lot of returning veterans and their families, and also we have become almost inured to a degree of a kind of a culture of violence. Now, some would say that that's part of American culture going all the way back to the genocide, as some people view it, of Native Americans. But there's no question in my mind that our warfare has contributed to this culture of violence. John Menarche, Robert, you had an exclamation point. Robert, do you think if we just spent one of those trillions of our tax money not on Iraq, but on a cure for cancer, for all that, our enemies might love the U.S. instead of hating us? Well, John, that's a very, very good point. I mean, around the world, people do love America in terms of our technology, in terms of a lot of our entertainment products, in terms of, they used to love us, and I think that many people around the world still love us in terms of our aspirations for freedom and our aspirations for upward mobility. But spending the money we spend on warfare, no, I don't think people love us for that. And if we put that money, invested it, yes, in a cure for cancer or any number of things, it would gain us not only the cure for cancer, but also much more support around the world. Cassie Muniz Ramirez, you ask, a few of my friends are loyal Trump fans. Cassie, who are you hanging out with? Cassie, why do you keep these friends? What can I say to them? Well, you can tell them that they're no longer your friends. You can also suggest to them that they watch the video that we made that's at the top of my Facebook page. Right now, 8 reasons why Republicans ought to dump Trump. Okay, let's see. Sean Ward. Is that right, Sean? When the boys wrote the Second Amendment, the boys, you mean the Founding Fathers, which I support, they were using muskets. Today's technology is so much more advanced. Where should we draw the line with the right to bear arms? Sean, my reading of the Second Amendment, and I Among other things, in my past, I used to write and brief and argue Supreme Court cases on behalf of the United States, so I don't come at this from just nowhere. My reading of the Second Amendment is that it was all about the right to bear arms for the purposes of militias, of local militias and state militias against the possibility of foreign governments or King George III or kind of a tyranny. But it was not the right to bear arms to shoot each other. That's not what the Founding Fathers had in mind. And so that's where I would draw the line. I'd say that we don't have a right to assault rifles, to handguns, to weapons that whose primary purpose is to kill other human beings. Debbie Prius, is that right, Debbie? Like the car? Do they put your name on cars, Debbie? Do you think the media should stop sanitizing these shootings? Do you think it would have any weight in Congress and the public to actually do something? No, Debbie, when you mean sanitizing, what are you talking about? Debbie? Debbie? So you mean sanitized by, you think that that the media is not showing the actual carnage, and that if the media showed the carnage, people might be more upset. Well, that's possible. I mean, certainly, if you look at wars, and when the public starts turning against, like Vietnam, it was some of the carnage that was actually shown in the American media. But I also worry that could desensitize people after a while. That you see too much carnage and people just stop even seeing it. Nancy Kirk, with regard to your post earlier about Bernie starting a third party, how would that work in our current system? Nancy, it's really quite simple. We do already have third parties. I mean, we already have, for example, a Green Party. I think the advantage of starting a third party that is about the political revolution, rather than using a party that's already there, is it would be Bernie's party. It would very explicitly use the energy and the enthusiasm and the commitment that Bernie has created to advance the causes that people have voted for and worked for and contributed to over the course of Bernie's candidacy. And it's not all that difficult. You do have to register in different states, but and you can run candidates. And you can support candidates, even if you don't run them as, and again, I'm using the term new populist or new progressive party. It could be any other title. Deborah Garbaz, is that right? Is it really so unrealistic to think that Bernie could win with a candidacy in the Green Party if Jill Stein steps down? I don't know, Deborah. That's a matter of kind of tactics rather than strategy. I don't know whether using the Green Party apparatus would be better than Bernie starting his own. Maybe slightly easier. Vishal, Vishal, you have a last name that looks like it's 17 letters. I'm going to try it. Okay, you bear with me. Vishal Narayana Mami. Did I get it? With Bernie taking the revolution to the convention, what are some specific strategies that we can use to push the Democratic Party's 2016 platform in a more progressive direction? Well, Vishal, you can let your member of Congress and also your senators know that you want Bernie's agenda as part of the platform. They will be there. They are probably superdelegates. Now the platform committee is having hearings around the country. You can find out. In fact, it's right on the internet. You can find out when and where those hearings are going to be. You might even want to attend some of those hearings. But make your voices known. If you think, for example, it's important to move to a single-payer healthcare plan or free tuition at public universities or a $15 minimum wage or a single-payer healthcare plan more broadly conceived, or getting big money out of politics, anything that Bernie has been proposing, this is something that is particularly important to me, breaking up the big banks, resurrecting Glass-Steagall. I think that you ought to communicate that and communicate it loud and clear. By the way, I should say one more thing. Even if those things are accepted by the Democratic Party and the Democratic Platform Committee, that doesn't mean necessarily Hillary Clinton, if she is the nominee, would accept them into her campaign. Demery Rohana, what will you do, Reich? Reich? Once all the votes are in and Hillary is the presumptive nominee, to get Sanders supporters behind the Democrats and Hillary, I want to hear specifics from you. Well, Demery, I don't know my specifics right now. I can tell you that I've said very publicly, and I've taken a lot of heat from a lot of people, a lot of Bernie supporters for saying this, that I think that once Hillary is the nominee, we do have to get behind her because, obviously, Donald Trump would be horrendous. I can't even begin to think of what this nation becomes with a Trump presidency, and somebody like Donald Trump with the nuclear codes, and somebody like Donald Trump able to nominate Supreme Court justices, and somebody like Donald Trump who runs the entire federal government and could use the machinery of the federal government to score points and to intimidate his opponents and do all of the things that Donald Trump does. So if that's not enough for anybody who is a Sanders, a Bernie supporter, to get behind Hillary, if Hillary is the nominee, I don't know what is, but I'll do what I can. Card Mueller, what, if anything, can be done to protect the integrity of the voting system to ensure people are able to vote, have access, and the votes are counted accurately? Card, if there's anything, we've learned a couple of things. We should have learned already in this primary, but now a lot of people understand. Number one, why superdelegates are really an anachronism. We ought to be getting rid of superdelegates in the Democratic Party. Number two, why they should be open primaries, because 42% of Americans are independents, and those independents have a right to be part of the primary process, I think. And so that those primaries ought to be open to independents. Number three, we ought to have national minimum standards for the primaries, for voting, in terms of how votes are tallied, paper trails so people have confidence that the voting was done accurately. There are too many allegations of irregularities. But now their eyes are open. Many people now understand things they didn't understand before. So I think we can move ahead, and pressure has got to be applied, not only to the DNC, but to the Republican National Committee and to Secretaries of State. Gino Amodio, which do you think is the best pathway toward a truly progressive and powerful party? A, start a new progressive party. Well, we've talked about that already. B, fix the Democrats. Well, they're not mutually exclusive. I think by starting a third party, we put pressure on the Democrats. The Democratic Party is not going to change just from the inside, because the inside is, these parties. Can I just say something about political parties? Political parties used to be basically grassroots organizations. They used to be citizens organizations. There were city political parties. There were state conventions. There were a lot of people. I remember this. I'm so old. I remember in the 1950s, 1960s. When political parties represented people. They are now giant fundraising machines designed to get as much money as possible. They're just like giant vacuum cleaners, and they go, where do the giant vacuum cleaners go to suck up money? And they go to people who have a lot of money. And those are political parties are not political parties. So if you're talking about changing the Democratic Party, you're talking about something that is, remember, a giant political money machine. All right? And support the Green Party to be more competitive. Well, I think that, as I said before, I think a new progressive party I'm talking about after the elections, I don't want to take any chances with Donald Trump, is, in my view, right now, the best way to go. And we have two more questions. One, Steve Daly, what does the vice president actually do other than be there in case the president dies? Well, as Teddy Roosevelt would tell you if he were alive today, just being around when the president dies is a lot, if the president dies. But the other thing to keep in mind is that the vice president presides over the Senate and a tie vote. But the vice president, certain vice presidents can have a lot of influence. Look at Cheney. I mean, if you have a president like W, who is not, well, let's just leave the sentence there. A vice president can fill in for the inadequacies of a president. And also, I mean, Al Gore was, I think, very, very active as a vice president with Bill Clinton. So a vice president can do a lot. If what you have in mind, I think what you're asking really is if Bernie Sanders were to become vice president under Hillary Clinton or even Elizabeth Warren, I mean, what would that be a powerful position? It can be. And we have one more question. You guys, a lot of questions today. Rana Beitler, I think that's your name. What do you do to relax and get away from all of us pestering you for advice and answers, even though we know you love us? Oh, what a nice question. That's such a nice question. How do you reinvigorate yourself? Well, I reinvigorate myself, by, talking to you and talking to other people about these issues. As I said, this is where I live. I mean, can I just say one more time? I remember a time when the government was not the enemy, when the government was us. I remember Martin Luther King and John F. Kennedy and even Dwight Eisenhower. And I mean, I don't remember them personally, but I remember the time when we had confidence that these people actually were acting in the public interest, and it was exciting. And being in government and being around politicians and getting involved in the political process was a very hopeful thing. I want you to feel that way. I want young people to feel that way. That's one reason I teach. So what do I do when I relax? I do that. And I also read, and I go to the beach, and I ride a bike, and I eat. So does that answer your question? Anyway, thank you all for being here. We're going to be here, and I'm going to put Dolly, still no word from you. I'm going to put Dolly Parton back on. But let me just say, you are great. I really look forward to this every week. I hope you look forward to it too. And I want to thank some people. I want to thank Zoe Umlaut Beck, who's here and a huge part of this, and also Yael Bridge, who has just been fabulous. She's behind this little camera, and we also have Lainey Inami. Did I pronounce that right? Inamini. And all of you, thank you so much. See you next week.